Hey, what's going on, guys? Rum Gaming here, back to the video. Today's episode, we are taking a look at the Discipline Priest for patch 11.15. Patch 11.17 is right around the corner. It was just announced recently. I haven't seen any sort of major changes for 11.17 in terms of like class tuning, anything like that. So as of posting this guide, everything should be up to date for both 11.15 and 7. Okay, let's go ahead and jump into some of the pros and cons. So you can see that Disc Priest is currently S tier. If you go to Archon GG, you can see when sorting by high keys that they are the best healer by far right now. They're a pretty massive step above Restoration Shaman, who is also a massive step above all these other healers down in A tier. And a lot of that is due to their insane HPS that they're pumping out right now. You can see 2 million HPS. Their max key right now is 21, and their DPS honestly is pretty decent considering that they bring power infusion to the group. If we scroll down a little bit further, we can take a look at the hero specializations. So currently, Oracle Disc Priest is probably the best healer in the game, which is very interesting, right? Because last season, Void Weaver was the go-to for Disc Priest. So this season is basically Oracle's time to shine. Let's go ahead and get into some of the pros and cons of why Disc Priest is so strong at the moment. And one of the reasons that Disc Priest continues to stay in the meta is because of their burst healing. So while over a long period of time, they might not have as much raw throughput healing as some other specs, they can really pump out the healing when it's needed. And a lot of that isn't necessarily just due to the raw healing that they do. A lot of that is due to the absorb shields that they bring. So all these absorb shields that a Disc Priest can throw out basically increases the effective health of the entire party. That's going to give you a little bit more of a buffer or wiggle room before party members' health pool hits 0. And we also have power infusion, right? That's going to be a huge damage contribution to the group. And if we go back to the healer ranking graph and we sort by DPS, you see that Disc Priest is at the bottom, but it's a little bit deceiving because of how much value that we bring to the group through power infusion, being able to grant all that haste, right, to one of our DPS. And we also have a class buff via Fortitude. This is just going to increase the stamina of our party. This on top of our absorb shield is going to give us a little bit more wiggle room and a little bit more cushion or padding on those health pools. And we also have a great external that scales with high keys, so reduces, or this is pain suppression, reduces all damage taken by a friendly target for 40% for 8 seconds. So as the damage scales up, that 40% stays the same. So this could technically scale up to, 40% of infinity. Obviously it wouldn't. But just to kind of iterate how important that 40% damage reduction actually is. It's a very, very strong, especially as you begin to push. So Disc Priest is just great for high keys, right? They bring power infusion, they bring absorb shields, and they're just great at surviving those one-shot mechanics. Now, we do have some cons as well. We don't have very good mobility. We don't have the mobility of a monk. We don't have the mobility of a restoration shaman with a ghost wealth. So you do have to kind of position accordingly. We're also a proactive healer, and in my eyes, especially for a new healer, that's kind of a con. You have to know that the damage is coming out before it actually happens, and you have to be sending your damage as enemy damage is coming to offset it. So kind of a weird way to think about healing, especially if you're used to the more reactive play style. But, as you run more dungeons, like anything else, you will get used to it. That kind of goes hand in hand with this final point here. Okay, let's talk about what Disc Priest even is. So let's go out to our talent calculator. If you scroll down and you just control left click on this, it will open a new tab. And you can see that these are going to be the talents that we're running at the moment. So let's first talk about the bread and butter of Disc Priest, the Atonement. So Atonement is like a buff effect that you can put out on your allies. And while this is up, the damage that you do will heal your allies. This is where you're going to get a majority of your healing from, so it's very important to understand what this is. So the way that you can apply this is through Powered Shield, Flash Heal, Renew, Powered Radiance, and Powered Life. Now the main way that you're going to be applying this is through our Powered Radiance, which is right here. So this is based on a charge system, and you can use a charge, and this is like a burst of light, a burst of AoE healing that goes out, and it will apply Atonement to all of your allies. Now, this will apply that Atonement at a reduced duration, 60% of its normal duration, but we do have various ways to extend that. So one of the main things when playing Disc Priest is to make sure that you have your Atonement up during those big burst windows where you're going to expect a lot of damage. So since we are running Oracle, we are running Preemptive Care. So it's going to increase the duration of Atonement by 4 seconds. We can also extend this through one of our main cooldowns here, Evangelism. extends atonement on allies by 6 seconds, and heals for X amount of spell power, split evenly among them. Another really good way to extend this is through Divine Procession here. So Smite extends the duration of an active atonement by 3 seconds. So you can actually Powered Radiance and then funnel some smites in behind that, and you're going to get extension on your atonements. Now that 60% duration that we're talking about here from Powered Radiance is actually really 70% if you're taking Enduring Luminescence. So you get that additional 10% from this, and we also get reduced cast time on a Powered Radiance. Now another great way to apply atonement is through just casting Flash Heal. So if you remember, if we go back to atonement here, Flash Heal is one of the things that will apply atonement. This could be one of our main single target heals, and there's a little bit of a trick with it. If you are running binding heals, 20% of Flash Heal's healing on other targets also heals you. So this means that through our Flash Heal, we can apply atonement on another target and ourselves at the same time. So this is a great way to kind of keep a permanent atonement on yourself, is just by spreading out your Flash Heals around to other people. And what you can do is you can put this, let's just say, for example, you Flash Heal the tank, you'll get an atonement on yourself and the tank, and then you can follow that up with a Powered Radiance to get an extension on that existing atonement. Right, so for example, I can't remember exactly what it is, but let's say an initial atonement gives you like 13 seconds on it. If you follow it up with another atonement, it'll last for like 20 seconds. So a Flash Heal into a Powered Radiance is a great way to get an extension of atonement on either yourself or the tank. Now we're on the topic of Powered Radiance. We're also running Harsh Discipline here. So Powered Radiance causes your next penance to fire 2 additional bolts, stacking up to 2 charges. And then kind of extending off of that, we have Wheel and Woe here. So your penance bolts increase the damage of your next smite by 20%, or the absorb of your next powered shield by 5%, stacks up to 8 times. So this is a buff that you can track, and basically you can stack this effect for really big powered shields. You get 40% more out of your powered shield if you stack it up to 8 times, or if you need some group AoE healing, you can just funnel that into a smite. Another big cooldown that we're taking, we have 2 cooldowns we haven't talked about here. We have Powered Barrier on a 3-minute cooldown. This is like the holy version of the anti-magic zone from Death Knights. This is going to reduce all damage taken by 20%, not just magic damage. And it's going to prevent damage from delaying any sort of spell casting. So big cooldown, use that in big damage phases. We also have Ultimate Penitence. So another button that you can press, you kind of turn into this Archangel sort of form, and you do a whole bunch of healing and damage to, whoever's around you. One sort of tip on this is you need to make sure that atonements are spread out to all targets before you press it. So, go ahead and Powered Radiance before you use this. Another strong window for us is going to be during our Shadow Covenant. So whenever we send out our Mindbender or Shadow Fiend, in our case, in this talent build, it's a Shadow Fiend. We're not running Mindbender down here at the bottom. This is a very strong cooldown window for us, and a lot of that is due to Inescapable Torment here. So Penance, Mind Blast, Shadow Word Death cause your Mindbender or Shadow Fiend to teleport behind the target, slashing up to 5 nearby enemies, causing X amount of spell power as shadow damage and extending its duration by 0.7 seconds. So this is very strong in Oracle as well. It's a little bit stronger actually in Void Weaver, but this is a very strong window for us. And the idea is to get all of your atonements out, go ahead and send your Mindbender or your Shadow Fiend, and then basically send all of your hard-hitting damage spells like a Penance, a Mind Blast, Shadow Word Death, and they're going to do a ton of damage and then also a ton of healing if atonement's out on your group. Now, since we are taking Void Summoner, the cooldown is reduced by 50% on our Shadow Fiend, so it goes down like a 1.5 minute cooldown. Our Evangelism is also a 1.5 minute cooldown. So typically what a lot of people do is they'll use their Shadow Fiend for like one specific cooldown window, and then whenever your Shadow Fiend's gone and you need another strong healing cooldown window, you can rely on something like Evangelism to get you through. And kind of rotating between your Shadow Fiend and your Evangelism is going to kind of allow you to pretty much always have a cooldown ready for like a big healing event. Now, I also want to get into the Oracle tree really quick, because to me, Oracle is more interesting than Void Weaver. I don't know why. I was really interested in Oracle when it was first released. It was unfortunate I wasn't as strong in Season 1, but now it's strong in Season 2. I want to go over some of the cool things about it. So we're running Premonition here. We have 3 different charges: Insight, Piety, and Solace, and they each have their own unique effect. Insight's going to give the cooldown of your next 3 spellcasts it's going to reduce the cooldown of your next 3 spellcasts by 7 seconds. Piety is going to increase the healing done by 20% and causes 70% of overhealing on players to be redistributed to up to 4 nearby allies for 15 seconds. And then Solace, your next single target heal grants a large shield and reduce the damage taken by 15% for 15 seconds. Now, at the end of all 3 of those, we have something called Clairvoyance down here at the bottom. And this is going to basically trigger all 3 of these at once. So this is kind of like the Super Saiyan version of all 3 of these. It's going to combine all 3 of these into one spell, so that will happen every 4th cast. Now, these 3 spells are kind of confusing to play around, right? Because it's going to pop up like Premonition of Insight's red, Piety's yellow, Solace is blue. When you're in the middle of combat, you don't really know which is which. So there are a ton of weak auras out there. I think I have a video on my channel about a weak aura that kind of tells you in the middle of combat which is which, like which is available to use. Like, hey, this is the shield one. Hey, this is the CDR one. So it's a little bit of an intimidating talent here, but you know, like anything else, you just solve it with the weak aura. Another talent I want to talk about is Waste No Time. So if we use a Premonition, it's going to cause our next Powered Radiance right here to be instant cast, and it costs 15% less mana. Right, so it kind of incentivizes you to press this pretty regularly in your rotation. And you can also pair Insight, right, with, you know, like your Powered Radiance to get a little bit of additional CDR on it. Oracle also massively buffs our Power Word Shield through preventative measures. We get 40% additional absorb on it, and then also assured safety. So Power Word Shield will apply 4 stacks of prayer mending to our target, and then directly below that we get an additional 30% more out of our Power Word Shield if it is cast on us. So Power Word Shield is mega OP. You're gonna make sure that you're sending it as much as you possibly can. A couple other little small things I'm gonna talk about over here on the priest tree. We talked about binding heals already. Surge of Light. So our healing spells have a chance to make our next flash heal instant and cost no mana. It stacks to 2. This will show up on your UI. You're going to use that in like light to moderate healing. And then if you're kind of new to priest, we have our power infusion. And then directly below we have Twin Son of the Priestess. So you get power infusion somebody else and also get the effect of power infusion on yourself. So it's kind of like a 2-in-1. So you're actually getting like 2 power infusions out of 1 spell cast, 1 on somebody else, and then you get 1 on yourself through this talent. Okay, I think that's it for now. Let's go ahead and get into like the rotation stuff. Okay, let's go ahead and take a quick look at our openers. So since we are kind of like this hybrid healing DPS spec, we actually have an opener, and typically it's going to look something like this. So if you're trying to burst, you're going to make sure you have a Shadow Word Pain on the target. You're going to make sure we have Power Word Shield on cooldown, and then we kind of go into our ramp with Shadow Fiend, Powered Radiance into a Mind Blast. So a lot of our healing is going to come through Shadow Fiend, but Shadow Fiend can't do its job unless we apply Atonement through Powered Radiance. Then from here, we can Mind Blast into a Premonition of Insight. So Insight is going to reduce the cooldown of our next 3 spell cast by 7 seconds. So you can actually funnel that into your next Premonition, which is Premonition of Piety. And then you can use Premonition of Piety and get the increased healing and funnel that into all of these different penance here. So we're getting the CDR from Premonition of Insight, reducing this by 7 seconds, and that's going to go into our penance, and that's going to make penance not have a cooldown. So 1, 2, 3 penance in a row will not have a cooldown at all associated with them. And then you can go into a 4th penance as well, since none of these incurred their cooldown. Now, since our Premonition of Piety does last for 15 seconds, and we want to get the most value out of that, we can penance, smite, kind of go back and forth between the two so that we get some value out of our smite. And the additional healing that we get from Premonition of Piety is going to all be funneled into our Atonement through smite. So this is a pretty good little burst window here. You can also take the smites out of it if you need some emergency healing. You don't have to put the smites in there. But yeah, that's sort of our general opener. Let's go down to some of the general priority. Okay, made a small update here. This is the list that we're going to be working with. So right off the bat, you can make sure that you're keeping Shadow Word Pain on, at least the primary targets. So go ahead and use it on your opener, and then as downtime does incur, you can kind of spread out more Shadow Word Pains. Right, all that taking damage is going to contribute to our Atonement healing. This is also going to generate some insanity for us. So try to get at least a few out. We're going to cast Power Word Shield on cooldown. If we remember from earlier, we do get Prayer of Mending stacks from this. Powered shields are really, really strong in Oracle, so use them as much as you possibly can. You know, we do want to prioritize ourselves over allies if we all have equal health. You can also, you know, if you're tracking targeted spells, which I would recommend, we have a setup for that on our sell guide on our channel. If somebody is being targeted by a targeted spell, go ahead and throw it on them. This will probably eat most of that targeted spell cast. Up next, we're going to be using Penance pretty much on cooldown. This can be a pretty good single target heal if you need it. If you need spread group AoE healing, just go ahead and use it offensively. It's going to heal the whole group through our atonement. Up next, we're going to be using our Mind Blast pretty much on cooldown. You know, just some additional healing through our atonement. Up next, we're going to have Surge of Light procs that kind of come through. It's going to come just kind of passively through healing spells, and through Smite, we get 2 stacks. So try to use them, you know, as much as you possibly can. It doesn't do a ton of healing, but it is very mana efficient. It's basically free healing. So go ahead and use those as they do proc. Next priority is going to be to apply our atonement through Powered Radiance. Again, we can kind of cheese this a little bit with Flash Heal, Surge of Light procs. You could Surge of Light heal, say for example, the tank and 1 DPS, and that would actually get you 3 atonements due to binding heals that we talked about earlier in the talent section. So this section here, so you can actually use, in my opinion, I like to use Surge of Light procs to spread atonement. I like to follow that up with a Powered Radiance to get a really long atonement window. So more than anything, you know, to me, you're kind of using Powered Shield and Surge of Light to help spread atonement, and then you're trying to extend those atonement windows with Powered Radiance. Because your atonement windows can go over 20 seconds if you know, cast 2 atonements back to back, right? So you have a lot of quick instant cast, easy ways to get atonements out. So that is kind of a mini game that you're playing. And typically you're wanting to save Powered Radiance for like on a boss fight, like a really hard hitting ability that goes out. You know, you want to be kind of mindful of the spell because this is really your only form of AoE group healing. If you don't have atonement out on your group, you're not going to be able to AoE group heal. So you always want 1 charge in your back pocket. So be very mindful of the spell. While we're talking about atonement, we have Ultimate Penitence here. You're going to make sure that you're not sending this without atonement up on all your allies, right? Because this is going to do a whole bunch of damage, and we want that damage to heal our allies through our atonement. And we also get a very massive shield through our Ultimate Penitence. And then we are also immune to knockbacks or crowd control effects as well. Up next, we have our Evangelism and we have our Shadow Fiend. So try to alternate these two. You know, through talent, Shadow Fiend will be a 1.5 minutes. Evangelism's a 1.5 minutes. So try to alternate those into like 2 separate windows. You're going to use Evangelism when Shadow Fiend's on cooldown and Shadow Fiend when Evangelism's on cooldown. So these will kind of act as your mini ramps. And then finally, if there's nothing else to do, go ahead and apply Shadow Word Pains and Smites. Again, Smite is not bad. Smite is really good because of, I couldn't find it. Here it is. Divine Procession. Smite extends the duration of active atonements by 3 seconds. So Smite is, you know, really good to press. You know, just make sure you have at least a couple of atonements up before you just go into spamming it. So, you know, just to kind of recap this, you have 3 mini windows and then like 2 big windows. So this is one of your mini windows. Insight with Piety, when those 2 line up, you get really strong healing through Penance spam. That's on a very short cooldown, right? Very short recharge time. We have Evangelism as the second, and then we have Shadow Fiend as the third. Really, Shadow Fiend the second, Evangelism the third, right? So you have 3 mini windows. And then you really just have 1 big window, I guess. Your big window is going to be Ultimate Penitence. But you have a couple other things at your disposal as well, right? We also have our Powered Barrier that's on a 3-minute cooldown. That's kind of like a big cooldown that you can use to kind of catch up. And then we also have our Pain Suppression as well. So the idea here is you don't want to use too much at once, and you kind of want to get this flow going in between your mini ramps and some of your bigger externals. So once you get sort of used to your Evangelism window, your Shadow Fiend window, your Premonition windows, you actually have like 4 mini windows because you also have Clairvoyance, right? Which grants Insight, Piety, and Solace all at once. So you really have 4 windows that you're working with, and that is really the biggest part, in my opinion, of playing Discipline Priest is managing those specific windows. Then outside of that, the other mini game that you're playing is when you're sending your Powered Radiance, and then in between Powered Radiance, you just want to make sure that you're using Surge of Light procs, and Powered Shield procs to spread out as many atonements as you possibly can. So one more recap, right? We have the Evangelism mini window, Shadow Fiend mini window. You have 2 windows with premonition charges, essentially. So that's 4 mini windows. And then you have a big window with your ultimate penitence. All right, then for consumables, we're running Flask of Tempered Swiftness here. It's going to increase our haste. We're running Tempered Potion, Algari Healing Potion, Algari Mana Potion, Algari Mana Oil on our weapon. Going to give us crit and haste. Crystallized Augment Rune if you can afford it. Feast of Midnight Masquerade for that main stat. Elusive Blasphemite. Going to give us primary stat and move speed. Right, we're not very mobile, so the move speed does help. And then a Deadly and Quick Onyx. Deadly Emerald and Quick Onyx, excuse me. Okay, moving on to Enchants. We are running Greater Rune of the Void Ritual on our helm. We are running Council's Guile on our weapon. It's going to grant us some critical strike. Chant of Leeching Fangs on the cloak. We're also running Leech on our bracers. And we are running Stamina on our boots. We're running a main stat on the chest. And then we're running Intellect and Stamina through Sunset Spell Thread on our legs. And then a double critical strike on our ring. For our embellishments, we're running Darkmoon Sigil Ascension along with Writhing Armor Banding. Going to synergize pretty well with the head enchant that we're running up here for more secondary stats. Okay, moving on to our tier sets. So our 2-set bonus, your healing spells have a chance to apply Insurance to their targets that heals them for X amount of spell power over 15 seconds. Insurance is consumed if an ally drops below 40% health to heal them for X amount of spell power. So very boring on the 2-set. We're just applying Insurance that has a chance to heal. If an ally drops below 40%, we consume Insurance for a burst of healing. We can also manually apply this Insurance through Power Word Shield. Once that shield is fully absorbed on an ally, they will be getting Insurance at 40% effectiveness, and then they're also going to get 15% increased healing from us. So not a lot going on, just kind of backs up what we were saying earlier. Make sure you're pressing Power Word Shield as much as you can. General tips, we've covered all this stuff pretty much already, but you can check that out if you want. And then going into stat priority, so we're prioritizing haste, critical strike, then a mastery, then finally versatility. Let's quickly talk about what our mastery even is. Grace, your healing and absorption is increased by 11% on targets with atonement. So mastery is pretty strong, but really, we don't want stronger atonements, we want more atonements. So that's why we're running haste as our main secondary stat. So we want to get cooldown on a lot of our hard-hitting spells, like Mind Blast, like Penance, like a Powered Radiance, for example. We want our cooldowns back faster. So haste synergizes really well with us. Powered Shield also through talents increases our haste as well. So we just have like a lot of synergy in our tree with haste. Up next, we're going to focus on critical strike. So critical strike over our mastery, because critical strike can still heal even if atonement isn't up on a target, right? So our mastery is good if we can keep permanent atonement up, but a lot of the times atonement will fall off on targets, and we want critical strike to be able to get a lot more punchy big heals out. Now, another thing that critical strike does that our mastery doesn't is it actually increases our damage. You know, we heal through doing damage, so critical strike is just going to kind of make more sense. The more damage we do, the more healing that we do. So after critical strike, then we'll focus on mastery, and then finally at the very bottom, we will focus on versatility. And then finally, versatility is kind of weak on us because you can't double dip into the damage as well as the healing through versatility. You only get one or the other. So in our case, it's only the healing portion. Okay, guys, that's the end of this video. If you enjoyed it, we do have a Patreon link at the top of our website. You can just click on this link. It'll take you right out to it. I also put a link in the description of the video, just if you want to help support the channel. No pressure at all. Also, a like, comment, subscribe, whatever helps the channel as well. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. We'll see you in the next one.